Jealousy. It's like a silent thief that enters your heart without knocking. At first, it seems harmless, a little envy here, a small comparison there. But before you know it, it takes over, stealing your peace, your happiness, and sometimes even the people you love most. My story is not just about jealousy. It's about how jealousy tore my family apart piece by piece, and how something much darker fed on that jealousy to destroy us completely. This isn't a made-up tale. It's something I lived through, something that still haunts me to this day. Imagine losing the people you love, not to death, not to distance, but to something invisible, something you can't fight. That's what happened to me. Stay with me until the end of this story, and I promise you, it will change the way you think about jealousy forever. The experience I had was not merely emotional. It became something supernatural. It was a phenomenon that even I struggled to explain. So, pay close attention, as this story may prompt you to reconsider the feelings you've allowed to blossom within your heart. Let's begin. In my story, jealousy didn't just create cracks in our family bond. It shattered everything we had. Furthermore, it paved the way for a malevolent entity that thrived on our shattered emotions. This story isn't just about human weaknesses. It's about how those weaknesses can attract forces beyond our understanding. So let's explore how jealousy, one of the simplest yet most destructive emotions, completely destroyed my family. This isn't just another story about jealousy. What happened to my family goes far beyond anything you could imagine. The events that unfolded were terrifying, unexplainable, and left scars that will never heal. But this is not just about fear, it's a warning. Stay with me until the very end, and I promise you'll uncover secrets that will make your heart race and your mind question everything you know about jealousy, family, and the unseen forces around us. By the time this story concludes, you might even find yourself scrutinizing your surroundings. So, let's begin this journey into the shadows, where emotions turn into something much darker. My name is Faison, and this is the story of my family. A family that once seemed perfect, but was torn apart by jealousy and something far more sinister. We were a small, close-knit group, my parents, my elder brother Danish, and me. Danish was the kind of brother anyone would look up to, caring, ambitious, and always protective of me. Danish's engagement to Aisha, a kind and beautiful woman who quickly became a part of our family, changed everything. Everyone admired her charm, and my parents warmly welcomed her into our family. But what seemed like a joyful beginning soon turned into a nightmare that none of us saw coming. We had no idea that the harmony within our family was on the verge of permanent destruction. We were like any ordinary family, living in a small but cozy house filled with laughter and love. My parents, though not wealthy, worked hard to provide for us and ensured we never felt the weight of their struggles. Dinner time was sacred. We'd sit together, share stories, and laugh until our stomachs hurt. My father loved cracking jokes, while my mother would scold him playfully for being too silly. Danish, my elder brother, was my hero. He was ambitious and had big dreams, but he always had time for me. Whether it was helping me with my schoolwork or playing cricket in the neighborhood, he made me feel important. Life was simple but perfect. There was no room for tension. There was no space for bitterness. We were happy, content, and deeply connected as a family. But sometimes, happiness can be deceptive. It can make you believe that nothing could ever go wrong. That's what we believed, until the cracks started to form, slowly and silently. And then everything collapsed. When Aisha entered our lives, everything felt perfect at first. She was charming, kind, and brought a fresh energy into our home. My parents were thrilled with Danish's choice, and they treated Aisha like the daughter they never had. It was beautiful to see them bond with her so quickly. My mother would cook her favorite dishes, and my father would share stories from his younger days to make her laugh. Danish, of course, was overjoyed to see Aisha blend into our family so effortlessly. But for me, things began to feel different. It wasn't something obvious at first, just small changes here and there. My mother, who used to spend so much time asking about my day, now seemed completely focused on Aisha. The praise, the attention, and the affection seemed to shift entirely toward Aisha. I felt invisible, like I was fading into the background. At first, I tried to convince myself that I was overthinking. After all, Aisha was new, and it was only natural for everyone to be excited about her. But as time went on, the feeling grew stronger. My brother and I had always been close, but now it felt like he was drifting away, too. I told myself it didn't matter, but deep down it hurt. And that hurt slowly turned into something darker. I remember one evening clearly. It was my birthday. Usually, my mom would bake my favorite cake, and my dad would make jokes about how I was getting older, but still acting like a kid. This time, Aisha planned a dinner for everyone. It was beautiful, but it didn't feel like my birthday anymore. It felt like everything revolved around her. That night, I sat in my room alone, staring at the candles on the cake. For the first time, I realized how invisible I had become. That kind of feeling is difficult to describe, the way it gradually erodes you. It causes you to question your own value and the purpose of your existence. I didn't know it then, but that feeling would soon consume me entirely, and something far darker was waiting to feed on it. I started avoiding family conversations. I'd stay in my room pretending I was busy, but all I was doing was listening to the muffled voices of laughter coming from the living room. It felt like they were building a new family without me. The more I thought about it, the more I began to resent Aisha, not for what she did, but for what she represented. She was the center of their attention, the reason I felt invisible. And then came the dreams. Strange, vivid dreams surrounded me, with shadows whispering words I couldn't understand. I'd wake up drenched in sweat, heart racing, but the feeling from those dreams stayed with me all day. It was like the jealousy had come alive, feeding on my thoughts, growing stronger with every passing moment. There was a part of me that wanted to talk to Danish, to tell him how I felt, but how could I? How could I admit that I was jealous of the happiness he had found? So I stayed silent, letting the storm inside me grow. What I didn't know was that the more I let jealousy consume me, the more it was inviting something else into our lives, something far more dangerous. It started with whispers, soft, almost imperceptible whispers that seemed to echo in the stillness of the night. Initially, I believed that my mind was deceiving me. Late at night, as I lay in bed, I would hear faint murmurs coming from the hallway. I heard someone calling my name, but when I got up, no one was there. The house was filled with an eerie silence. Then came the shadows. At first, the shadows were subtle, appearing as fleeting glimpses out of my eye. I turned my head quickly, expecting to see someone, but there was nothing. Yet, the feeling of being watched was impossible to ignore. The darkness in the corners of the room seemed to grow thicker, almost alive. One night, as I sat in my room trying to distract myself, I noticed a shadow move across the wall, even though there was no one in the room with me. My heart raced, but I told myself it was just my imagination. But deep down, I knew something was wrong. These weren't normal occurrences. They felt deliberate. The whispers grew louder as the days passed. They were no longer just faint murmurs, but clear words, though I couldn't understand what they were saying. They seemed angry, accusing, and every time I heard them, I felt a chill run down my spine. I didn't tell anyone. How could I? They would think I was losing my mind, but I wasn't imagining it. Something was there, watching, waiting, and feeding off the chaos that jealousy had planted in our home. Asterisk. It happened on one of those nights when the whispers seemed louder than usual. I was lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, trying to convince myself that it was all in my head. But then I heard it, a faint sound, like someone crying, coming from the hallway outside my room. My chest tightened, and for a moment I froze. The sound was soft, but it carried a sorrow that made my skin crawl. I gathered all the courage I had and got out of bed. The hallway was dark, illuminated only by a faint sliver of moonlight coming through the window. The crying stopped as soon as I stepped out, replaced by an eerie silence that seemed to swallow the air around me. That's when I saw it. At the end of the hallway, there was a figure, a tall, shadowy form that didn't quite look human. It wasn't solid. It seemed to flicker, like it was struggling to stay in this world. Its head was slightly tilted, as if it were staring straight at me, though its face was shrouded in darkness. The sensation of my legs adhering to the floor was overwhelming. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. The figure raised its hand slowly, pointing directly at me. And then, in a voice that sounded like a mix of whispers and screams, it spoke a single word: jealousy. My heart raced, pounding so hard I thought it would burst out of my chest. I wanted to run, to scream, but my body refused to obey. And just as suddenly as it had appeared, the figure vanished into the shadows. The hallway was empty again, but the air felt heavy, almost suffocating. I stumbled back into my room, locking the door behind me. I sat there, trembling, unable to process what I had just seen. Was it real? Or was my mind finally breaking under the weight of everything I was feeling? Deep down, I knew the answer. Something was in our house, and it had no intention of leaving. The next morning, I woke up feeling like I hadn't slept at all. The memory of the shadowy figure and its chilling whisper replayed in my mind over and over. My heart would race every time I thought about it. I couldn't keep it to myself any longer. I had to tell someone. At breakfast, I decided to share what had happened. I saw something last night, I began hesitantly. My voice was shaky, and I could feel the weight of their eyes on me. There was someone in the hallway, a shadow. It spoke to me. My father put his cup of tea down and frowned. A shadow? Faison, you've been spending too much time alone. Your mind is deceiving you. My mother chimed in, her voice full of concern but disbelief. You've been under a lot of stress lately. Maybe it's just your imagination. Only Danish looked slightly uneasy, but even he shook his head. Come on, Faison. You've been acting strange lately. Maybe you just had a nightmare. Their words cut through the fragile courage I had summoned to speak up. I wanted to scream, to make them believe me, but the doubt in their eyes silenced me. It wasn't just disbelief, it was dismissal. They thought I was making it up or losing my mind. That night, I lay awake in my bed, every creak of the house sounding like a warning. The whispers returned, louder this time, more persistent. They didn't just call my name now. They spoke in broken phrases, words I couldn't quite piece together. The shadows in the corners seemed to move, almost taunting me. I didn't dare leave my room. I wanted to run to my parents or Danish's, but what was the point? They wouldn't believe me. I was alone in this, and the fear was suffocating. With each passing night, the darkness seemed to get closer, pressing against me like an invisible force. The worst part wasn't the shadows or the whispers. It was the realization that no one was going to help me. Whatever was happening, I would have to face it alone. And the thought of that made the terror even more unbearable. And then, the supernatural events grew worse. The whispers in the night were no longer just voices. They became conversations, angry, mocking, and loud. Shadows seemed to follow me wherever I went, their presence lingering even in daylight. They will leave you, it hissed one night, its voice echoing in my mind long after it disappeared. They already hate you. The worst part was that it didn't feel like a lie. The figure wasn't just scaring me. It was planting thoughts, feeding my insecurities, and making me believe them. One night, I woke up to find it standing at the foot of my bed. Its presence was palpable, as if the air surrounding me had become impenetrable. It leaned forward, closer than it had ever been before, and whispered, "It's your fault." All of it. I couldn't move. I couldn't scream. All I could do was sit there, paralyzed, as it dissolved into the darkness. The tension in the house mirrored my encounters with the figure. My mother and Danish had a shouting match that ended with him storming out and taking Aisha with him. My father tried to console my mother, but she pushed him away, accusing him of taking sides. I sat in my room, listening to the sounds of my family falling apart, the figure's words echoing in my mind. It felt like it was winning, feeding on our misery and growing stronger with every argument and every tear. The house felt different now, colder, darker, like the life had been drained from it. I wasn't just scared anymore. I was exhausted. Whatever this thing was, it wasn't going to stop until it had taken everything from us. What was the most distressing aspect? I didn't know how to fight it, or if I even could. Asterisk. The night Danish and Aisha left was the night everything truly fell apart. It started with another argument between my mother and Danish. She accused Aisha of turning him against his family and sowing discord in our once happy home. Danish, exhausted from weeks of tension, finally snapped. "You've never given her a chance," he yelled. "All she has ever done is attempt to be a part of this family, and all you have done is push her away." My father tried to intervene, but my mother wouldn't back down. Her voice trembled with anger and frustration as she shouted back, blaming Aisha for the cracks that had formed in our family. Danish didn't wait to hear the rest. He stormed out, slamming the door behind him, with Aisha silently following. For a moment, there was complete silence. Then my mother broke down, crying uncontrollably. My father, frustrated and helpless, left the room without saying a word. I stood there, frozen, unable to process what had just happened. Danish was gone. Aisha had departed. The remnants of our family resembled fragments of a puzzle. Beyond anyone's ability to reassemble. One night, I heard footsteps outside my door. The footsteps were slow and deliberate, stopping just as they approached the door. I held my breath, waiting for the knock, but it never came. Instead, the handle began to turn slowly, as if someone was testing it. My heart pounded in my chest as I stared at the door, willing it not to open. But it didn't. The footsteps retreated, fading into the distance, leaving me shaking and drenched in sweat. The isolation was unbearable. My parents were too consumed by their own grief and anger to notice me, let alone the terror I was experiencing. I couldn't tell them about the figure, about the whispers and the shadows, because they wouldn't believe me. They hadn't believed me before. I was alone, completely, utterly alone, in a house that no longer felt like home. Jealousy. It's a small word, but its impact is immense. It begins as a subtle murmur in your heart, a sensation you believe you can manage. But if left unchecked, it grows, spreading like poison, turning love into hatred, trust into doubt, and unity into division. My family story is proof of how destructive jealousy can be. It doesn't just hurt you. It consumes everything around you, leaving nothing but emptiness and regret. But jealousy isn't just about emotions. It provides access to thoughts and forces that we may not fully comprehend. Was the shadowy figure that haunted me real? Or was it just a reflection of the darkness within us all? I can't say for sure. But what I do know is that jealousy thrives in silence. It grows stronger when we ignore it, when we allow it to fester in the corners of our hearts. So I ask you, as you finish listening to my story, to take a moment and reflect. Have you ever let jealousy take root in your life? Have you felt its pull? It whispers in your mind, telling you that you're not enough or that others don't deserve what they have. If you have, don't ignore it. Confront it. Talk to someone. If you don't, it could escalate into a situation beyond your control, potentially causing more destruction than you could have ever imagined. And as you turn off this video and return to your life, keep one thing in mind. Shadows in your peripheral vision, whispers in the night. Are they your imagination? Or is it something darker, someone waiting to feed on the emotions you try to hide? Remember, jealousy isn't just dangerous, it's deadly. Thank you for listening to my story. If it made you think, gave you chills, or left you questioning the things we can't explain, I hope you'll share it with others who might feel the same. Your support means everything to me, and it helps keep these stories alive. If you enjoyed this video, Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Have you ever experienced anything like this? Do you believe that feelings of jealousy and fear can actually lead to supernatural experiences? Let me know in the comments below. And this is just the beginning. There are more stories, some even more haunting than this one, that I'll be sharing soon. So, stay tuned. And don't forget to turn on notifications so you don't miss what's coming next. Until then, take care and remember, sometimes the scariest things aren't what you see, but what you feel in the dark.